Salam, Namaste, Sat Shri Akal, Adab. My next guest is a serial entrepreneur. He's a trusted advisor, he's a restaurateur, he's a filminist. I didn't know this word existed. He's a collector of matchboxes and a passionate hotelier. He's the founder chairman of Hotelivate, a new age, innovative and curated consulting firm spread across Southeast Asia and now the Middle East. This episode, we will be talking about his early life influences, his life journey, his mantra for perseverance, and more importantly, his definition of success. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please welcome my dear friend, Manav Thadani. Thank you so much, Manav, for being here.
Thank you.
It's absolutely a delight. It's taken me about 2 months for me to get you here, but
Thank you.
I know you've been traveling.
Pleasure to be here.
Traveling very extensively, right? When I was giving a preface about you, there are certain things which I kind of used. Serial entrepreneur, restaurateur, and I hope I pronounced this right. It's called the filminist.
Filminist, yes.
And I had to look up this word called what exactly is a filminist, and it says matchbox.
Yeah, I love collecting matchboxes.
Let's start from there.
So growing up, I came from a big house. My father at the bar had these achar journeys, glass, and they were filled with matches. And I was fortunate, we used to travel a lot. And in those days, you actually got matchboxes to collect when you went to restaurants and hotels. So he always used to collect, and I started collecting from there. I lost my father very early on. I was 19 years old in college. So I just kind of continued that trend. I was living in New York City. Every restaurant had matchboxes, so it was easy to collect. So that's how it started. And then I said, if I keep them in achar journeys, they will not survive. So why not put them on a photo frame? So I have these 4 of them right now growing, like 4 feet by 5 feet things which I framed, and I've kind of put a glass enclosure over it. So when I look at it, I say, I went there with that person, or this was with my family, or this was in New York, or wherever. So it brings good memories of that.
And do you still collect? As if you go down to a hotel and if you find something which is interesting.
How life has changed, smoking is no longer that prevalent. But what people have done is now they have those cards.
Yeah.
And those cards are even more colorful. So I've continued that trend. I've been lazy. I have enough to create 2 more frames. One of these weekends.
And as a collector of collectibles, are these traded for anything?
No,
never.
But I know someone, a guy called James Kaplan, ex-head of development. James recently gave me a matchbox that he was carrying for the longest time. And it was from a place which had kind of shut down. And he said, here's it. It was a Concorde matchbox. So apparently in the Concorde, inside the plane, they used to allow smoking at one point of time.
70s, 80s.
Right.
Yes.
So that was a matchbox from that time.
Oh my God. That's really
So I have friends who know that they'll bring me something or the other.
Manav, you said your early childhood was somewhere in New York?
No? Lucknow, which is where the Khana Tunde kebabs or the Kakori kebabs or all the kebabs come from. My father and mother were very sociable people. And when I say sociable, it was unbelievable. There used to be a dinner party at our home pretty much once a month for 50, 60 people. Unheard of in those days. There would be people coming to a house all the time. In fact, my mother says it's run like a hotel, but she did it very happily. We had the setup, we had the cooks. We would get the cooks from outside. So much so we were in the movie business. When they used to go get the movie reels, the guy would go also bring in a box of frozen pomfret, and then that would get served. So I think I saw hospitality very early in my life. And as a result of that, I was one of the few kids who was interested in, giving the plate out, the napkin, the fork, or whatever it is, and distributing that. So I think a lot of that came seeing my parents being in that space.
And early childhood was also in Lucknow school?
Everything. Till 18, I did my schooling in Lucknow from La Martiniere.
Okay.
Yeah, enjoyed every bit of it.
And how was it? Because at the end, 18, and I'm assuming this was in
I graduated
70s,
in 89.
89, right?
89.
Yeah, 89.
So graduated in 89. Listen, I came from an affluent family, but yeah, I used to love cycling to school. I loved the sports. There was no TV distraction, no phone distraction, nothing, right? And I feel bad for kids today because I think all of us who grew up in that era, we had real friends.
For
We
sure.
used to go down. I was in the cantonment. We used to cycle down to a friend, play cricket, play soccer. Used to stay back in school to play sports. I see a lot less of that
And
happening.
you mentioned cantonment, I'm assuming.
No, we were one of the older families
Who had
lived in
the
cantonment.
cantonment area.
Yeah.
Right. And your mom was a homemaker?
No, my mother worked in the office. She handled the finance.
Oh, for the business?
Right, yeah.
Oh,
She
very
was.
nice.
So we were in the movie business.
Right.
My grandfather was working with the British Army, running movie theaters for them in Multan, which is now Pakistan. There was a plague in Pakistan that happened, and the entire battalion was moved to Lucknow, and he was asked to move with them,
Right.
which is what got us into Lucknow.
Was it pre-partition?
Pre-partition? We're talking about early 1900s.
Got it.
We opened our first movie theater called Mayfair Theatre, which was well known in Lucknow in 1937 or something like that. Mayfair, Basant, we had lots of other movie theaters. So that's where we were. So we were, I guess, in the service entertainment business.
So nice. So at that point in time, so as owner of, let's say, movie theaters, were you distributors as well? Or
No.
was that a
Just
completely different?
Just exhibitors.
Just exhibitors.
Just exhibitors.
And again, because I come from Bombay in the same time when
Correct.
you graduated,
Correct.
18.
Yeah.
I was in Bombay at that point in time. How was Lucknow?
Lucknow was a great city. It was one of those old Indian cities where everyone knew each other. People would get invited out to each other. The only restaurant to go to was Qualities or one restaurant. Otherwise, there was no entertainment, right? There was no Taj.
The Tehzeeb was
And so all the entertainment happened in people's houses.
Yeah.
And my parents were perhaps more sociable than others. You went to the Carlton Hotel and you knew the owner. So I think it was a great time.
Do you miss Lucknow? Do you miss those early
I
years?
miss that Lucknow.
You miss
I
that
don't necessarily care. I mean, Lucknow has changed, as have most cities,
For sure.
right? And but yeah, I think that's what influenced the food part of it and got me excited. I also, I was traveling a lot with my family just for holidays. So there was a lot of family bonding. I think I stayed in some of the best hotels, and that influenced me that hotels is something I may not mind working. My dream was when I went in 89 to study that maybe someday I'll own a hotel or a restaurant, actually a club. I knew I didn't have enough money to own a hotel. So I said maybe I'll own a club because a club mein membership bechenge.
But you didn't want to go back into the family business of being
No,
exhibitors?
that was not something that was
exciting you at that point.
Well, yeah, and my parents never stopped me from. They were quite happy. So funnily enough, we did get a consultant to come in. I must have been 15 years old. We got a consultant to see if the movie theater could be converted into a hotel. And I never saw that report. I've looked for it. I don't even know if that person made a report or not, but apparently I was told it was unviable.
But what stands there?
The same thing, building, it's an old building. I think a hotel would have done great.
Okay.
But yeah, at that time I had no sense that I would ever be a hotel.
And your early graduation would be in what kind of stream? Did you take?
No, so I was an arts, I was not a good student. So
You weren't a good
I
student?
was not a good student. I was a backbencher. I majored in history, commerce, economics. So those
And
were
what's the definition of a good student at that point in time?
I was in the
it
bottom percentile.
Bottom percentile.
Yeah.
Me too.
Most of us in the hotel business are perhaps
Me
at
too.
the, and we're not ashamed to talk about it now. But I think, and which is why my parents were okay when I said I want to go to hoteliering, because it was seen as a slightly easier career path. I think even back then they were pretty sure I would not get into any of the Delhi colleges of worth anything. And my sister had already gone abroad, so she had seen success. So, why not, pursue that?
But were there any comparisons? Let's say, assume your sister was doing well, and were there any comparisons
no, we
growing
were
up?
no one in the hotel business. Also, when I went, people used to go at that time for graduate studies, not for undergraduate studies. In fact, even the RBI government did not disperse
dollars.
So it was very difficult for my parents to
Send
kind of
during
fund money. And I had aunts and uncles out there who were able to support it. But it was very difficult. But hey, I found myself in New York.
And this is for your graduate studies?
Undergraduate studies.
For your undergraduate?
I did undergraduate. I did a Bachelor of Science in Hotel Management and a Master of Arts in Food Service
But
Management.
did you know you wanted to do hotel management?
I knew I wanted. I applied to hotel schools.
Oh.
I did ED at NYU, got into NYU. I had applied to Cornell and a few others, but when ED came through, then I just...
But was US the choice of destination?
Yes,
Is
very
it because,
clear.
of course, you had extended family
No, and
there?
also I had some family, but I'd also traveled to the US multiple times, and I just liked it. And I also always knew that I would come back.
Oh.
Even before I went, I said I'm going for 4 years, 5 years, and then I'll come back. And yeah, I never got tempted to stay on. I could have got a green card. My son says you should have got a green card, but no, I think no regrets.
And you did your master's as well then?
I did a
from NYU?
From NYU. Before I graduated, my mentor offered me a master's opportunity and said, do you want to do master's? And she said, we'll cover 36 of the 40 credits.
Got it.
And I said no, because I want to get more of a degree in the business stream. So she went back and checked, and she got permission that I could do 19 of my 40 credits from the business school. So actually, half my schooling for the master's degree came from the Stern School of Business.
So nice.
So a little bit of that entrepreneurial spirit that you see, I have to thank, I guess, the NYU Business School, although I don't have a degree to
that's fine, but at the end of the day, Stern Business School dovetailed your master's degree.
Right.
And is it instantly you came back to India after that?
So one of the things I did is I wanted to, what I call, and I tell youngsters today, is to pay your dues. So while out there, I wanted to do all the positions that I would not want to do in India. So in fact, before I left from here, the summer before I left, I did an internship with the Oberoi Delhi. I was doing mesoplast, coffee pouring, water pouring, and all that stuff. In the US, my first job was, I got lucky. I walked the streets. I actually saw a newspaper classified ad, applied, and I became a receptionist at the Sheraton, what was the Sheraton 4 Points then. And then the next 3-4 years, I did, a second job was housekeeping at Peninsula. Third job was opening of a new hotel, Crown Plaza, again at the front desk. And then I did a waiter's job. My fifth job was a front office manager.
And this is
all in New York. All during classes. I used to work Fridays, Saturdays. I needed the money.
Got it.
I pretty much...
So you capitalized on that 20 hours of work week.
Correct. I used to pay for... like I said, I lost my father in my sophomore years, and my mother was under a lot of pressure. So I had to work hard. I would save every dollar if I could to have a better meal or... and that's...
So Manav in Lucknow, and by the time Manav was in New York, and what was that difference? Because, of course, at 18, once you lose your father,
I think I
say
changed.
you become a man, right?
I think I was, as some students, I used to be the life of the class. I became a lot more serious. I'm not that serious. You look at me, right?
Yeah.
But apparently I was a lot more...
Something changed in you.
Yeah, apparently I became a lot more responsible. I felt a lot more responsible. Maybe a little bit of arrogance came in because in New York, you have to be rough and tough to survive, right? Sure. And you started taking decisions. So I I started doing things the way I wanted to do things. And, you get that freedom in a college. But yeah, I enjoyed every bit of it. And New York really toughens you up.
Yeah, for sure.
And the fact that even though I came from a fairly affluential family, it was difficult to pay those fees. So I knew I had to pay for some of it. And that made me more responsible.
But this ability for you to take your own decisions and make your own decisions, was it from an early childhood? I understand you came from an affluent
I think so.
family.
I'm also the youngest. So I have a brother who's 10 years old, older to me, and I have a sister who's 6 years older to me. So I'm the baby of the family.
So to the brother, you're literally the youngest, not a sibling, but a child.
Well,
right?
whatever.
16 years, right?
10.
Oh, he's 10 and she's 6.
6, yeah.
Got it.
So I think, I didn't spend too much time because by the time I was in school, my brother was in college and he was in Mayo, I was in La Martine, Lucknow. So we didn't really spend that much time together. And my parents were older, right? I think my father must have been 50 when I was born, and my mother was also in her 40s. Early. So I think, I think it just, the entrepreneurship or whatever you want to call it, came at a young age.
Manav, let's go back to the childhood. Did you have that drive? Did you know it within you? So even, let's say when you were 15 or 16, I often think back when I was 15 and 16. I'm not sure I have very vivid thoughts, but I always knew there's something special about me, right? However, the school had discounted me off because I was a backbencher, but I always knew. I couldn't quantify it, but it was there. Did you have that in you?
Yes and no. I'll share something I probably never shared with anyone else. Brought it up in the Bible. I'm not into astrology.
Got it.
But, as a youngster, you grew up and, you dabble with it and someone, aapka haath dekh lenge, and that guy said you're born on the 1st, so you'll always be a leader. And then there was an army major general who came to our house. We used to entertain a lot, and he told my parents, I want to see his hand. So I went and met him. This must have been when I was 16, 17.
Right. Yeah.
And we sat down under a peepal tree and, he gave me gyan, and he said, whatever you do in life, you'll be the leader of whatever you do. And some reason that just stuck in me that whatever I do, I should aim to, which is also why I thought that maybe that's why I didn't go get a job, like a hoteler, be an entrepreneur, right?
But also I came from an entrepreneur.
I look back 25 years and I say, whatever I've done, I've been a leader in many of the fields that I've wanted to get into, right? Or what I've done. So I think from that point of view, but I think it was more subconscious rather than wo hoega, apne aap hoega.
Yeah.
There's a lot of...
You did not seek comfort in, let's say, working for somebody and there is a salary. You rather take that risk?
Yeah, I did work, right? I joined HVS in the US. I actually applied for I wanted to come back to India. McDonald's was just coming into India. KFC was just coming into India.
This is early 90s now.
Early 90s. 89, right? 87, 88.
Yeah.
And I thought, ki unke saath jaakar kam. Let's work for a multinational in India, right? Rather than come back. Didn't get hired because they already had got partners in India.
Got it.
And so I said, okay, I have 2 years OPT. Let's do that OPT in the US. And I found HVS, Steve, who was my mentor and founder. And I said, hey, I'll join you. And he actually said, why don't you join me? I said, Steve, I can't join you because I'll leave in 2 years. He said, I'll take you for 2 years. HVS used to have a very high turnover. And I joined him, and then I got an opportunity to talk to him once, which itself is a different story. But and I said, Steve, would you open an office in India? Because I knew he wanted to open an office in Singapore or Hong Kong. And every time we would get the associate ready, they would get poached and they were gone. So he said, yeah, go to India. And the only condition he laid for me is go work in the London office for 6 months, which I did. And then I came to India and set up HVS. And, we had HVS in India for 20 years.
But HVS, right from the very outset, was consulting the hotel industry?
Only hospital. HVS used to stand for Hospitality Evaluation Services.
Got it.
While I was there, it became HVS, and then it's like IBM. No one knows it was International Business Machines, right? Hardly very few people know that.
Being the founder chairman of HVS, I need to delve into the 1990s of India, hotel hospitality, 2000s. Take us through this 30-year journey.
No, at that time, consultants were typically the retired general managers who would be offering consultant, like the type that my father must have brought for our own project, and
But at that time,
no
there was
report.
only Taj
There was
and
no
the
report.
Oberois,
Yeah, but there was hardly any requirement, but there was no reports or something. So when we came in, and good training provided by London and everything, for us, a report meant also that we had an editor on board who would edit everything that would go out. Numbers were backed with assumption. There was no numbers just thrown out.
The envelope is very sanctity to the report.
We had Horvath. We had Uttam Dave, who was running PKF. Ashish Jakhanwala was part of Uttam's team. So we had a few of these guys who were there. But I think when it came to quality, we were ahead of them. Also, I think I had a lot of time on my hand. We didn't have that much work. And because you had time, I used to start writing a lot of stuff, authoritative stuff, publishing what is now still continuing with Hotelivate, the Trends and Opportunity Report, right? And I used to send out a newsletter every month, and I had to not only type it out, and then have it what do they call it? Photocopied or electrocycle कहते हैं उसको जो भी, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, of course.
We had cyclostyle, and literally had to have copies made. I would buy my own envelopes, have it typed, stuff it, lick it, put stamp on it, and mail it out. That's how, because there were no emails.
But let me tell you something. People who have worked with you, Manav, you may not know this, and this is one thing which is right across everybody, and they say you will look at all the I's, you will do all the T's. It needs to be perfect.
Attention to detail was something that I think in a consultant is very, very important. There was this lady by the name of Linda Dias. She was the executive housekeeper of the Peninsula, New York. And I really learned attention to detail, because she would do this and then would be sitting there and talking to you naturally, and then she'd say, and you would not say anything, but if you were with her, you would know exactly what she was doing, right? And I think I learned very quickly. And it's something I won't say it. Mr. Oberoi, right? Oberoi is all about attention to detail, right? And I think in the hotel business, when you want good service, when you want something, it's always been about attention. The smaller things that matter much more.
How has hospitality actually really evolved in India? From the Taj and the Oberois, of course, people know there's Marriott's, there are international brands, but to that 20-year-old who looks at these brands but does not understand the evolution of it, I wanted to know from you. We have X thousands of rooms today, right? But how has it really evolved?
So my first Trends and Opportunity report had 18,600 branded hotel rooms in India.
And this was early 90s?
This was 95, 96 data I'm talking about. We started in 97, but I got the 2 years prior data, right? So we actually, as Hotelivate, even today, that was data that only we have, but we have data in the country from 95, came in 97, 95 to now. So A, the numbers have gone up. B, average rates are down. When you look at the countrywide, why are they down? Not because the rates have gone down, because in those days, only Taj, Oberoi's, ITC, Leela were there.
True.
Today, you have the budgets. You'll have the budget hotels, the mid-segment hotels. So the average thing has gone down. That's the only reason. I think the quality of service is unfortunately on the way down. That's because of the talent crunch that we have, and I'm sure you'll bring it up at some stage. I also think that the way, today's people who are at the leadership level, today's people, they don't have the same amount of experience that the prior generation had. वो कहते हैं ना, खोखले हैं अंदर से.
वो grind नहीं देखा उन्होंने.
Grind नहीं देखा. And I was telling this to your students earlier today. You have to give your dues.
Right. So you're talking about 18,000 rooms, and where are we today? And
165.
correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's very
Bangkok
low.
alone has about 165.
Bangkok, Dubai, New York. Yeah, but we did a very interesting study during 2018-19, where we were actually trying to assess the number of rooms India has. No one has that answer. And I'll try and pull that report out and share with you. We realized that India had around 3.7 million rooms. No one talks about the 3.7 number because by the time you add the guest houses, those days Oyo was wearing great guns, homestays, the budget independent hotels. We did a kind of an assessment of that, and that number was 3.8 million, which today would probably be at 4.8 or something.
Yeah. So, but in your assessment, when you're looking at the branded rooms, right, and the branded hotel rooms is about 175,000, and Bangkok alone would have it. Have you missed the bus somewhere?
No, we're scratching on the surface. I see it as an opportunity rather than anything else.
Why couldn't this opportunity be in 2010?
There was no demand. You see, you have to realize that a lot of the business in India, the branded supply in those days was all in the cities. There were hardly any leisure locations. And therefore, because you were in the cities, it was all business, commercial, MICE oriented, right?
True.
Today, the next supply that is going to come up is going to come up in remote leisure location. And leisure is growing in India faster than anything else.
Got it.
Apparently, we're going to have the 100 million people who fall into a certain, what is called the upper middle class spending power. They all want to take holidays.
But when you look at places like New York,
Correct.
and I'm just going to name these three places: France, Paris, Thailand, Bangkok, Shanghai. The number of tourists, international tourists coming there. And, where the paradox for me is, you have such a vibrant, I would say, culture economy, right? Religious places. And yet we do not attract inbounds.
I see you're falling into the trap of saying that there are not that many foreign tourists coming in. I agree. Could we have done better on the foreign tourist front over the last 30 years? That's a question, you can put forward to the government and no one will. Listen, I came into India in 1997 and we had barely 1.5 million, 2 million tourists coming in. The highest we got to was 10 million, right? And they had to, we'll get to 25, 30. Even now the government says we'll get to X number, nahi hoega, right? My question is, why do we need that? We have 1.4 billion people, right? Even if 1% of that wants to travel, right? That's 14 million people.
And do you believe Indians are now traveling because there is infrastructure?
Yes, absolutely. That's changing. That is going to change the way leisure grows in India. My worry is on the sustainability part, right? We love to get carried away by the headline news. Look at what happened recently with Lakshadweep, right?
True.
We can't afford to have Lakshadweep developed to compete with the Maldives. It's stupid. Absolutely stupid.
Totally agree.
Right? We have 14 islands or 13 islands, right? If you build even 13 resorts, it'll kill that market. That's it. It'll it's the end of Lakshadweep before it has even started. So I think we get carried away. I am not so inclined that we must get international tourists. I think we have enough domestic tourists. Those, yes, can we do a better job? Of course we can. But I think we have enough of our local market that can fuel. And look, the rates haven't come down in the last 3 years post-COVID once Indians have started traveling, right? Most rates have gone up by 30, 40, 50% in most markets.
Pre-COVID levels.
To pre-COVID levels. And the Indians who are traveling, right? I was in Goa yesterday. The best performing hotel pre-COVID out there was one particular hotel, which was 18,000. That hotel has just closed the year at 29,500. It's the same hotel, right?
He says that you have Indians who are traveling outside.
Earlier it would have 55% foreign travel, 45% domestic. Now it has 90% Indian and 10%.
So the shift is within India. You're absolutely right. So,
I mean,
a 2% shift in this large population is another 200,000 rooms.
I drove from Gurgaon to Pushkar in 5.5 hours.
True. Okay. Which would take ideally
Which is, I drove, and I know I haven't done that, but I did Udaipur to Delhi in 9 hours, and I'm sure with the new highway that will be 8 hours.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I mean, the fact that we can perhaps in the future go from Delhi to Bombay in 12 and a half hours driving, it's amazing.
But when you compare hotel, right, with, let's say, aviation has grown. Today,
Correct.
I think we do around upwards of about 14 crores annually, the total number of, with 800 more aircrafts coming in. Is that aviation, and is there correlation to now?
Yes, there is. And I think it's easier to ramp up airplanes than it is to ramp up hotels. So we are in a current upcycle. Historically, not just in India, but globally, I think the hotel industry is cyclical. It's a 7-year cycle typically. We're on that upcycle right now. So
for our audience, can you explain this? What do you mean by that 7-year upcycle?
So I've been here 27 years. So let's say I would have seen 4 cycles. That means I should have seen 2 or 3 upturns and 2 or 3 downturns. So I'm saying from one peak till that valley and then another peak, average should be 7 years. Sometimes it can be 5, sometimes it can be 8, 9, but the average should be 7 years.
And is it again correlated to where the stock markets are?
No, nothing to do with the stock market.
There is no correlation.
No, I think a lot of it is supply demand. What we are seeing unusually right now is the combination. Why is the industry doing so well right now? Because there are convergence of a few things. You've got the supply demand mismatch. You've got the infrastructure that has really improved. And you've got a lot of disposable income available post-COVID for whatever reason you may want to call it. And because the airline infrastructure is weakened because there are not too many flights going out, so people are traveling within India.
But from the airline industry, and I just pick up reports. See, I am an aviation person, right? 20 years I worked there. A lot of Indian consumers are kind of talking about when the demand, let's say in December or Diwali or, the peak seasons are there, and then the surge pricing is so high, it's sometimes easier to go down to Thailand perhaps Dubai and travel within India. And we're killing our own market.
Right.
Is hoteliering or the sector more somber in terms of surge pricing than the way we look at the pricing in aviation, at least for certain sectors? I remember in December, Bombay was, I think each one way was about 25,000 rupees on a particular day.
I think aviation does a much better job of revenue management than hoteliers. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't think so. The aviation sector is doing itself any justice by charging those high fares. It's short term. Everyone's trying to milk it
because it's a duopoly.
It's a monopoly or duopoly, whatever you want to call it. It's not good for the industry, but I think that's the nature of how we are as human beings.
In the next 10 years, that 175,000, is that number right?
Sure, 160, whatever, 65.
Okay, around that. Where do you think this number would be? The headline number from 4.8 million could be 5.8 million.
I don't know the headline number, but I think we'll add at least another, in the next 10 years, you're saying, I think we'll at least add another 100,000 rooms, branded rooms. So much faster growth.
So that's good.
Much faster.
Much faster.
Yeah, and part of it is the development, more international brands. Who would have thought that? I mean, Taj and Marriott are fighting it out for no number of rooms and hotels, right?
Yeah.
That would have been unthinkable maybe 15 years ago or 10, 15 years ago.
So, as you rightly said, I need to kind of come back to that question. If the industry is growing this much, right, and compounding now at least about 17-18%?
Correct.
Right?
No, it's 6 to 10.
The industry is compounding at about 6. Yeah, hence 100,000 in the next.
Correct.
You're right.
Correct.
How come hospitality institutions, when you look downstream, upstream is the industry, downstream is where the skill cadre are coming, the management cadre is coming. How come this aspect is not keeping pace where the industry is heading?
It's a nightmare which is about to come.
And we are just acknowledging it.
Yeah, no, we're talking about it. And I'm going to say it, I know I'm on camera, I'll get into trouble, but I don't think the international brands are doing enough. I think when it comes to Taj or Oberoi's or some ITC, at least they have their hotel schools. At least they're doing maybe not enough, but they're doing something, right? But as far as the other brands are concerned, all they're doing is poaching. And because it's not their own money, it's the owner's money. We'll get something. They say we do training. Their training is videos and so forth. I'm sorry, you cannot train people on videos and so forth. You need to give practical training. You need to give them some sort of coaching. And I know some people. I've helped a few underprivileged children get jobs. The first 3 months, and I'm not going to name the brand, but the first 3 months, they're not getting any, they only get one food while they're there for 8-hour shift. They're not getting any salary. They have to live in a particular city. How can a guy, we want, I'm not talking management, I want people who can serve me tea, coffee, right? How can you not pay even 20,000 rupees stipend or 30,000? And then you're calling yourself an international brand and you want to talk about skilling and so forth.
So this is how I probably see where the problem happens. As I said, you require the skill cadres, and this is the only branded hotels we are talking about. And of course, there are the unorganized sector, which is crazy. Do you know, and I'll give you this year's statistics, NCHMCT, which has IHMs,
correct,
all around India. I think there are about 96 state IHMs, central IHMs, and private IHMs. Pre-COVID, the total number of seats in IHMs was 16,000, and the total number of students who would aspire was 60,000 in India each year for 16,000 seats, right? That number today from 60,000 headline has come down to 12,000.
Yeah, and you still have 16 or 18,000 seats.
No, but the total number of seats is only 4,000. So to your point, if you are compounding at 6 or 8% and assuming adding 10,000 rooms, right?
There's a problem.
Providing 4,000.
No, there's a problem, and you're going to have pay scales that are going to go through the roof, and quality of service is going to go to the dogs. And I don't think the brands realize it. Owners are complaining. Brands are too busy firefighting and growing, and it's an impending disaster.
To your point, if he has access to the Taj and he has access to, let's say, a better service, right? And I believe they will command better rate, better premium than perhaps.
So I look at your programs, right? And you have two streams. You have the main hospitality stream, and I think not all of those students are going to stay back in hospitality. And
no, they're very broad.
That's the nature of the beast, right? Yeah. But at least I'm very glad that you have this group of students who are in the culinary program, and most of them will at least stay in the culinary program, right? And whether it's hotels or restaurants, at least that. So I think we need to see a lot more of that happening. And I wish there was a division that you did for housekeepers, and you did the same thing, or for other service sectors. And I think there's a huge market for that.
So I'm in school. At the end of the day, I tell the industry, look at how IT proliferated in India, and you know it, Manav. In the 1990s, the industry went into universities and said, what help do you want from us? Because we expect, or we anticipate 200,000, 400,000 coders, or perhaps software professionals, right? Project managers each year, right? And collectively, the bench strength in India at that point in time was 15,000. So they added the capacity. The industry helped the universities scale and build intellectually.
Right.
Courses, relevance. I just don't see that happening here.
Yeah, like I said, if you ask me to pick one area that we have a problem which is coming, and you can see the headlights, you can see them come, it's coming towards you.
Yeah.
But as of right now, no one seems to, I won't say no one, but we're not doing anywhere close to enough.
You are a man of super influence on the hospitality sector. I think even through your Hicksas and Hosis, this is something, especially
I'm going to talk about it, right? And I'm more blunt, but at the end of the day, it seems like everyone says it's other person's problem.
Yeah.
So we're not doing enough, but that's where
We are doing our bit.
Sure.
But you know.
Sure, and I think you're doing some of your bit,
Yeah.
and I was a little critical in the class, right? And you're also losing students. You're doing a lot from the management point of view and youngsters, right?
Correct.
But I think I wish you guys could also like create that whole, like you've stated, the culinary part.
Correct.
Maybe something for housekeepers
For sure.
or servers.
Yeah.
And I know it's not part of your model, but there's a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
Even if it's a 4-month kind of a training program that needs to be
The
done.
youth empowerment, actually, just to let you know, it's a little too early to talk about it, but this is something which
Skilling, as we call it.
Yeah, skilling. We have it in our charter for this year.
Right.
I'm not sure it may happen in the first 2 quarters, but from the 3rd quarter onwards, we have something. Because even the Haryana government through the youth empowerment wants us to do something for them.
Correct.
Because Haryana as a state, it's part of their mandate. So
Sure.
yes, this is something which we are kind of looking at. And I think, to your point, we should be, if we are a school, we should be both upstream, downstream at all levels.
Correct.
And provide that kind of quality education. Manav, I want to switch to your many hats beyond consulting that you wear, right? You were an early investor with Sammy, and take us through that journey. And very recently, you're a restaurateur. Take us through that journey as well.
So on Sammy, interestingly, Ashish, who's my partner as co-founder, I was his co-founder, approached me back in 2009 saying, listen, I was in development at Accor. I've had enough. I want to do something of my own, and I'm raising some funds, and we'll build a hotel company. And do you think you as HVS can do management, asset management, rather than my having to put? And we started chatting, and I didn't know him that well at that time. And we started chatting. I said, actually, let's do it together. I'm tired of doing consulting. So that's how it started. And then I said, maybe I'll ask my partner, Steve, at HVS. And so actually, Sammy, I mean, I coined the name Steve Ashish Manav Hotel Investments.
Oh, is it? Is it?
Sam, yeah, that's how that.
I didn't know that.
I mean, we often use that, but that was how it is. And so if you go to Ashish's office, you'll see the 3 photographs. But I think, so and then we went out and raised the money. And, I want to give full credit to Ashish because that's his company. He's built it. Very quickly, I realized that we were both strong-headed. We both can't be the captains of the ship.
True.
And it was better. He was better at it. It was better for him to run that business. And I was part of it. I'm still part of it. I sit on the board of Sammy. But other than that, nothing. And we were fortunate.
But for the younger audience, Sammy Investments, Sammy.
So we grew. We started by building 5 greenfield projects initially. That's what we raised the money for. Equity International, which was an investor, came to us and said, you need to start buying assets. And the Sammy team became very good at buying asset and asset managing it to kind of rebranding them,
and
restructuring them.
These were brownfield assets?
No, these were regular. Our first asset we bought was a Royal Orchid in Ahmedabad, which we've now sold to Green Park. One of the other assets we bought, for example, was again another Royal Orchid, which we've converted to Sheraton in thing. Then we picked up the Hyatt Regency in Pune. So we bought existing distressed assets.
So distressed, but is Sammy as a model are investors or the operators?
We are only investors. We didn't want to have the hat of being. See, in a hotel business, you can be a real estate owner, investor,
Or an
you could be an operator, or you could be you could also be the person who's building those hotels.
Got it.
And one of the things that I tend to agree with Ashish, right, was let's be in the business of owning the assets. In those days, and even today, we had enough management companies. So Marriott, Hyatt, IHG are all our operators today. Sammy has a great asset management team that looks after these assets and turns the screws on the brands as and when required. And we also did not want to build our own hotels, so we tied up with a few other companies that would provide that project management services to build those hotels.
And when you look at India, let's say for the next 10 years, when you're talking about another 100,000 odd rooms, What kind of a model would perhaps all these
So
companies?
we currently have 31 assets and 4,800 rooms. Yeah, and our intention, unfortunately, COVID did hurt Sammy, and our debt went up. It also delayed our IPO by 2 to 3 years, and there were tough times, right? And we had to take more debt just to kind of survive and stay out and, stay where we are. But now we are publicly listed, so obviously we use that fund to pay off on our debts. And yeah, knowing Sammy and the DNA that they have, they'll probably also grow, whether that growth comes through further acquisitions or a few greenfield projects. Just before the Sammy IPO, they also bought the Do It portfolio. So that's where it is. But I like I said, I don't get involved in the day-to-day operations. I'm also not a spokesperson for Sammy. I leave that to Ashish. And he's as outspoken, if not more, than I am. So he's very, he does all of that. But yeah, very happy with the way it is performing.
Nice. And talk about you just opened, I think, this Indo-Japanese restaurant. I love the name. Just
Indian Japanese. So that's also a great story on entrepreneurship. I had a girl by the name of Panchali who joined me 13, 14 years ago. And Panchali didn't really cut it out as a consultant. And, relatively early on, we had to kind of part ways, and she just wasn't fitting in. And she left us and found her calling in F&B. She'd come from Oberoi to us. She found her calling in F&B and got into this thing. And till date, I think she's opened 130 restaurants. She is, I think, top 50 women entrepreneurs in the Middle East. She's in the top 50 hoteliers.
Beautiful.
She has 10 restaurants, I think 4 of them in Dubai, 4 of them in Riyadh, and now India. So when we started talking a year and a half ago, we said there's no one offering high quality consulting in the F&B space. And I said, yeah, and we said we don't have to do too many projects, but even if we did 1 or 2 projects, it's a good business to be in, worth trying. And that's when we said, listen, let's do our own project first so that you establish yourself as being successful, because
so you have playbook.
Consultants have to walk the talk.
So right.
I today in India, I'm one of the few hotel consultants who can say I've done it, right? I've got my own restaurants, I've got my own hotels, I've been part of that journey.
So right.
I've seen it a little bit more closely than maybe other consultants
and you've worked within the industry.
And I've worked as well.
Dirtied your hands as much as anyone else.
So I think so we started talking, and she has a partner in New York who runs 17 restaurants called Alta Maria Group. So we got on a call and we said, what kind of a food? We found the location in the Manor Hotel, which was the original location for Indian accent.
Yeah.
And we said, what kind of cuisine? And I said, listen, there are 2 things that are very popular. One is Indian food, particularly in Delhi, very popular.
Absolutely.
And the other is Asian food, partly because I also love Asian.
Yeah.
And we started talking. He said, what kind of Asian food? I said, Japanese is doing well, Korean is doing well.
True.
And they came back 2 days later and they said, listen, we didn't know the name at that time. We have this concept which we're getting ready to launch in Dubai, which is Indian Japanese. Our chef Advait, is the current chef for Mohalla, which is an Indian restaurant in Dubai. And what do you think of that concept? And I loved it, right? And then we came up with a name called Inja, Indian Japanese, and the next thing you know, we've opened that.
Yeah, and it's been almost a year now?
We are in our 9th month now.
Oh, you're in the 9th month.
Yeah, we started in March, so 10th month, sorry.
And how's the response been?
So, considering from what I heard, the first 3 years of Indian accent really struggling and so forth, I've not had to put money back, which is a good sign.
Yeah.
No, we're certainly doing better than slightly break even. Have we started seeing huge returns? The answer is no. But like I said, we missed out. By the time we opened, it was...
But was it anticipated? As in, when you were crunching your numbers?
You always learn, right? So March, April, the project got delayed. April not necessarily is the best time of the year to open a restaurant. Most of the nominations, awards happen in September, October. So we were less than 6 months old, so we didn't qualify for any of that.
For that cycle, yeah.
So I think, you have to see the full cycle through. And we have seen that. And I think, like I said, it's doing reasonably well. December was a very good month for us. We also have some space next door. We've converted that to an Italian pizzeria called Camillo's, which is doing actually really well. That's already paid back in the first 3 months or whatever investment we put out there.
It's within the same complex.
Same complex. And we will do at least one more.
In Delhi?
Yes.
Bombay also is a very thriving F&B scene. But having said that, Bombay rentals are through the roof. I don't know how people make money there.
Rentals are through the roof everywhere. I think we'll do one more, at least in NCR, hopefully in Gurgaon.
Oh, hopefully in Gurgaon.
So that you and I can
yes, of course,
do this maybe at the restaurant in Gurgaon.
But tell me something, Manav. So when you look at independent restaurants and when you have restaurants within hotels, right? I think it's completely skewed today. What in the 90s and the 2000s, I think hotels were known for their restaurants and those experiences. Those now have come outside, right? How are hotels looking at the independent?
The problem is hotels are not looking at it.
Wow.
Okay. Even this year's Hixa theme is all about F&B. And I've done it because now partly I'm also in the restaurant business. But the sad part is that we're not doing enough on the training. The GMs, the operations people, they're not running it like an entrepreneur. They're running it like a job.
Yeah.
When I run an independent restaurant, I have rent to be paid, I have bills to be paid, I have salaries to be paid, I have limited funds. Tell me which hotel, very few hotels look at restaurant P&Ls. Yes, they look at the income, they look at the expense, the average check and all of that. But I bet you if you add to that another 25% for rent, maintenance, utilities, everything else, right? That project will be unviable. Absolutely. So until we start training our young associates or general managers to start looking at it as a P&L, we're never going to make that difference.
But do you also think because they come from an operator mindset,
it's not their money.
Correct.
They have a job.
Correct.
And the development guys will come and say, our brand standard require us to have 2 restaurants, 3 restaurants. Owners need to push back.
Yes.
You want a second restaurant, third restaurant, put a restaurant out there, but outsource it out to a third party. Don't try and run it on
And they're
your
not
own.
willing to do that.
No, more and more of them are realizing that they have no choice. But yeah, do your all-day dining, serve your breakfast, whatever you need to do. But, either you focus on it, because there's money to be made. There are some really good restaurants out there being run by some good hotels.
True.
They do a good job, but that percentage is really small.
And again, if I take back to, let's say, a culinary school that we are, more and more our students want to join independent F&B.
Of course.
It's the latitude for which they can do so much more.
Correct.
There's a lot of innovation which is happening here.
Right. I'm going to come to Panchali and say to take some of the people from the culinary school. Because you know what? We've got 2 restaurants.
Absolutely.
We're going to have another 2. We have 10 more in the Middle East.
Absolutely.
So maybe next time
I can tell you safely, this generation, at least the ones which we are kind of incubating over here, as long as they show innovation, creativity, they are yours.
Correct.
And that's exactly what
No, so I think unfortunately hotel restaurants are just not being able to, and the government hasn't helped. This whole thing of 18% versus 5% is also killing the restaurant market, and we need to do more to fight that out, because at the end of the day it's the same thing. You can't have the same GST level on that.
I think the way the government kind of puts it, again, because that's the India and the Bharat, and 2,500 per capita, what they're looking at is, if you can afford to eat out, means you can afford to pay tax.
Yeah, but it's not true, because I think the government needs to look at it. Let's get just the revenue, right? Imagine if they did even out the paying and the restaurants started doing well. Yeah. So on one side, they look at the licensing, right? Yet look at Haryana, right? You can get more alcohol in Haryana than you can get clean water.
So right. Absolutely.
Okay. And those same people are drinking off that thing, getting into a car and driving. Yeah. So what are we talking about?
That's true. That's true. I think in time,
correct,
things would, stabilize, more and more outspoken people like you with the government, since you're in the restaurant industry also now, you will be influencing kind of that decision. Tell me something, Manav. the youth of India. I personally believe that if India has to grow, more and more youth need to get into entrepreneurship. You had a service orientation for some time, but you came from an entrepreneurial family, but you wanted to lead the way, you wanted to dictate your own rules in life. There are a lot of entrepreneurs who are watching you, or budding entrepreneurs, right? And when they go back home, their parents, perhaps, I don't blame them, they come from that kind of a mindset and saying, nahi, naukri kar, entrepreneur mat ban, you'll lose everything. What would you like to tell them?
I have to say, and you may find it surprising, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Okay. I have had, in my various businesses, I've had various partners. Some have worked, some have not worked. I won't name anyone, but a lot of them just didn't have the entrepreneurial mindset. Or they wanted to.
Were they risk averse?
They were risk averse. I see that even today. They were risk averse. They wanted more stability in terms of salary and all of that. You need a lot of patience.
For sure. And the ability to walk away.
Yeah. So one thing which has improved with me is I'm becoming smarter and quicker at taking decisions. Earlier, you would keep trying, ek aur karte hain. Now, like if it's something not going to work out, I'd rather walk away from it right there.
The stop loss needs to happen right there.
Yeah, and I just did something last month, which I was looking at working on it for 6 to 8 months, and I decided to. I had multiple partners who were getting involved in that. Some of my current partners, and we had maybe put together a very strong team for it, and I decided to walk away from it because there was something about it, my sixth sense, if you may call it, my entrepreneur sense, saying that maybe not risk.
And tell me something, if I again go back into your entrepreneurial various journeys, right? Was there any plan B ever for you? That E&E chalega, I'll go back. You know what? I got an NYU master's degree.
No, I would not have been able to go back once you come out here.
So you only worked on your plan A?
I worked on plan A, and but then you had plan A, part 1, part 2, part 3. You did.
But plan B means let me go back into working for someone.
I would have had multiple opportunities, have whatever, of, so many of my associates who worked with me are now in development or are heading brands in India and other places, right? I could have had the same opportunities, right? So if you ask me, was there a plan B? That could have been a plan B, right? And I've had that multiple times, as recently as maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. I could have, if a brand was looking for a head, they could have, I may have been considered, may not, but I'm just saying the opportunities were there.
Yeah, for sure.
But I enjoy doing what I do.
But Manav, when I look at it, you're a builder.
Yeah.
You're not a follower.
No, I'm not a follower. That's the problem, right?
You're Bob the builder.
Yeah, Bob the builder. Yeah, I don't think so. I could work. I need a lot of freedom. And I give credit to my ex-partner and founder of HVS. He gave me a lot of freedom to do what I wanted to do, experiment, because you will lose.
Yeah,
you will lose.
Sure.
I have lost a lot of money as well.
Absolutely.
People don't talk about that. But yeah, I've lost a lot of money, but that's fine. You take it on the chin and say, oh, what next?
What next? True. That mindset is successful entrepreneur.
Correct.
Ability to walk away. And even if I lose, ability to pick yourself up.
Yeah, you just need to know where your stop loss is.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And you decide in advance that this is what I have. This is how much I can stretch. And the recent thing that I walked away from would have been one of the biggest things I was going to do. But there, my risk was twofold. One, of course, it was a big risk. We were raising some capital for it. B, it was going to be other people's money. And that scared me even more. Because when you're playing with your own money, and you lose it, you don't have anyone to respond to. You just keep quiet about it. If you're smart on your taxes, you carry that forward and you make some of it back. But
I heard it somewhere that even when you're raising money as an entrepreneur, if you look at that money as debt rather than equity. you will give far better returns to your investors.
Yeah, I didn't look at it that way because so far a lot of my businesses, other than Sammy, which was an institutional fund, I've always put my own money where my mouth is, and I'm pretty happy. You know.
No, what I mean to say is, if I'm picking up money from an investor, typically that's equity to me. I need to look at it as debt because I need to pay him back.
Yeah, and that's a good way to look at it. You know, and I think you have to be satisfied in life with what you do, right? I could have picked any one of these jobs that may have come my way and made a lot more money out of it on an annual basis or whatever. But the sense of satisfaction that I have sitting out here talking to you on my successes, on my businesses.
Freedom of your time.
Freedom of my time. I mean, listen, I have two partners in my consulting business, Achin and Megha. You know, we're a couple of generations apart, but, you know, to see them grow and now they're trying their hand at entrepreneurship. I think that gives me the high rather than going and being a head of a particular hotel company or something else.
But a lot of people I know who know you and who have worked with you, Manav, and they swear by your leadership philosophy. A lot of people who I have spoken to, they speak about and people who work with you don't leave you. What's that leadership philosophy of yours? Why are you this magnet?
I don't know. There are a lot of people who have left, right? That's why you're such a big alumni.
They have left because you've also...
I have placed a few of them.
You have nurtured them.
I've asked them. I mean, I remember a guy who's in the development and, you know, he had finished 5 years with me and he came to me and he said, I need to move. And I said, what do you want to do? I want to do development. I said, okay, but you're not ready for it. He said, oh. I said, listen, you want to leave? Okay, you start working with me on all these assignments. And he did literally do that. And he came back to me and said, now am I ready? I said, yeah, you're ready. I said, where would you like to go? So we discussed three companies. I picked up the phone and I called the CEO of that particular company and said, do you have a space? And of course they had space. He's there. He is still with that group.
What is that leadership? What does it tell you?
No, I think...
You invest in them when they're with you. But you invest in them when they become your alum. Yeah,
but also look, they are, when he's out in the market meeting new owners and they say, "Kaun bata payega, feasibility karega?" Well, guess who they're going to remember?
Yeah. But
and that carried through whether I was HVS or Hotelivate. I mean,
for sure.
These are all old clients of ours who still come back.
But nonetheless, I think the people who I spoke to, they speak so very highly of you.
Thank you. But
and the fact that you kind of really nurture them, you know.
Right.
You bring them here and in the next 5 or 7 years, they're there, you know. Investing time, Manav, I think is leaders' most important.
I think there's one more point which I think is a strength of mine, and I learned it from my mentor, right? Which is that when you're grooming someone and you want to give them the freedom to learn, you have to allow them to make mistakes, right? That's number one. They will make mistakes. We all make mistakes. The other thing is the ability to look the other way. So even in my existing organization, I have Achin, I have Megha, a few others. They like to do things slightly differently. I may not be 100% in agreement with it, the way they're doing it, but I've learned to look away with it.
Because they're carrying those thoughts and that.
No, they're their own entrepreneurs.
Of course.
And therefore, if they're the leaders, the buck should stop with them.
True.
If people got to know that I have the right to change the way they want to do it, then they're losing their power.
True.
And I learned that from my boss, right? There were people, and there are a lot of Indians who say, "Arey, main to aapke American boss ko phone karke bata dunga to make the changes," right? No, he always respected the fact. He always replied with a copy to me so that the buck would stop with me. And that makes a huge difference to have the confidence of your mentor with you. Yes, you will make mistakes. And if you have to make changes, give that lesson in private and say, listen, I don't agree with you, but it's your call at the end of the day.
And I say that's the true hallmark of a leader, you know, allowing people to grow.
Correct.
Right.
I mean, my India restaurant, Panchali used to work for me, right? But I tell her today, I said, you're my boss. You're the one who's running the restaurants, right? So the buck will stop with you. You want to do something, I'll just step back.
I think that's your humility.
So I think that's the way it should be, right?
Yeah.
Whoever is running the show should be given full freedom to do what they want to do.
Manav, pretty much we have come to the end of this episode, but the next 10 years for Manav, your own personal journey, right? Let's not talk business, let's not talk all your ventures. Where does Manav want to go in his personal journey in the next 10 years? Where are you at in your mind? And what is it that you want to do now?
Well, COVID changed a few things for me. I used to openly say that by the time I'm 53, which is now, I would want to kind of leave and, just enjoy life, sit on a few company boards, and play more golf, and that's right, and be a mentor. That changed a few things. So here I am, still working hard. I pulled out of this new business because I thought, let's not get into something completely new. So where we are, I'm going to consolidate what we have with our consulting firm. I like consulting. We've just opening our Middle East office. I think Middle East has huge opportunities. So really focus on growing that and pushing that part of the business. I'm loving the restaurant space.
Oh, lovely.
So I love food. So that's something I see more as a hobby. So I will continue doing that for a couple of years. Expand that or just enjoy it for the while it's still enjoyable, because and that's really it. I'm not too sure if I'm at that stage where I can do 3 or 4 new businesses. It's tough. I love traveling. A lot of it is for work. Maybe when both my children are going to be in college, I'll have a little bit more time on my hands. So we'll see. And I think I would rather not look 10 years ahead. I'll look 5 years ahead. So next 4 or 5 years, this is where I am.
And a lot of travel for you?
I'm traveling a lot.
Non-work.
Non-work. This year will be a lot of non-work because there's some family weddings. But otherwise, it's mostly business travel. But I love my business travel. I travel a lot of international locations. I have friends. And one thing I learned early on as a consultant, which was taught to me by someone, that when you're going out on field work, you must pick a meal, something or an activity to do, which is outside, which is an experiential activity, right? Yeah. And that has been something.
Which you have been doing.
So in Goa, day before, I went to a nice seaside, beachside shack kind of a place to have a nice Goan meal, right?
So nice.
And I had 2-3 people who I was trying to train, because the youngsters then want to travel with me, and the way I interact, it's a lot of learnings.
Yeah. This podcast will also be heard by many, many thousand of aspiring students, right?
Correct.
Hospitality still is victim of its own perception here in India. When they listen to you, what is it that you would like to let them know about hospitality education? They understand the sector through you. They know where the sector is heading, but they still shy away from embracing hospitality education. At least some of them.
See, I think you have to understand, what does that hospitality education get you? And I think for someone getting into the hospitality education space and then getting a job, working in a hotel is very exciting. You see different kinds of people. You're not sitting behind a desk. There's a new adventure every day. It is actually a lot of fun. I can tell you that fun doesn't come in the first 2 years, because that's when you're really grinding, you're doing the most disgusting jobs, long hours, you're working on times when everyone else is on holiday. So yeah, the 2, 3, 4, that's what I call paying your dues. But once you get through that, I think the doors that it opens, the people that you meet, it's a great platform for growth. Whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's working, or just becoming a traditional general manager or a front office or whatever.
Running a consulting firm.
Whatever, right? I think there's that experience you can't do through an engineering degree or a finance or a marketing, right? It's a very, very different experience. I love it. I would not give it up. If I had to redial, it will be the same number.
It will be the same number?
Yeah.
That's so nice. Thank you so much.
Thank
Manav.
you.
I think it's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
And to the audience, I always say, if this episode has enhanced 1% of your knowledge and 1% of what you've been thinking about, and we've been able to add that value onto you, I think we've kind of done our job. To Manav, I think he's an exceptional man, right, of talent. And for me, every time I kind of meet him, it's my 1% growth. So,
Thank you.
Manav,
Very
thank you
kind.
so much. No,
Thank you so much.
Seriously, I have loads of respect for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. for your
Pleasure
time.
is all mine. Thank you.
Thank you.